Welcome to Ace of Pentacles, your career strategy and workplace wellness podcast. I'm your host, Sarah, and I'm so happy you're here. Join me every week as we investigate how people design and discover their way through their careers. Together, we'll explore the science of well-being at work and discover tools and strategies to help us do well and be well. Hi, Justin.
Hello, Sarah. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. How are you doing?
All is good. Super just excited for this opportunity. So I'm really just grateful for you.
I'm very excited to chat with you today. Justin, I'm going to start us off by sharing a little bit about your background, about who you are, what you're up to, and then we'll get into it. Okay?
Plan.
All right. For our audience, Justin Oliver is a coach, content creator, wellness advocate, and educator based in the Bay Area, whose life mission is to empower others to realize they have the power to design a life they are passionate about living. As host of the Living Once Twice podcast, Justin inspires his audience to use life's plot twists as a catalyst for self-discovery, reimagination, and transformation. Through his coaching, Justin guides men through developing mature emotional intimacy within, thus expanding their connection capacity to be both emotionally safe and available to themselves and to others. All right, Justin, welcome to Ace of Pentacles.
Sarah, thank you so much for having me. Super excited and just a huge fan too of you, your podcast, and just all the great work that you're doing in the world.
I am so excited for this conversation. I've been waiting a whole year, I think, to have this conversation ever since you interviewed me for my first episode of this podcast.
I know it's crazy how the universe works, cool full circle moment.
Yeah. All right, Justin, you've spent your career in higher education and specifically in programs for new students at UC Berkeley. Can you take us back and walk us through the why behind your work? What first drew you to student and pre-college program leadership?
Yeah, totally. So for context, I went to school in New York. I graduated in 2009 with a degree in communications. And originally I thought I was going to go into sales with that degree. But I'd happened to just be on campus one day and found this job posting for an admissions officer position. And I found it really exciting, this opportunity to talk to high school students about college. I had just wrapped up having a really great college experience. And so I, applied for the job. Everything worked out, I ended up getting it. And it really just opened up this pathway in this career path that I never would have imagined. And what I found so enjoyable about it, and while it's been like my sport these last, 17 years since graduating or so, it's been this opportunity to sell, quote unquote, education. And what I mean by that is education opens up doors for so many people. I know for my life, I can only imagine for yours and your audience, it's opened up so many doors in terms of, changing my trajectory of where I thought I would be, my family's path, the people that I've met, the places that I've gotten to go to. And so being able to open up that same pathway of opportunity for others, I have found incredibly rewarding. And the thing is that's also rewarding about it is each person's individual journey is their own. Whether you're working with the 40-year-old, 50-year-old that's returning back to school, or you're working with the newly fresh out of high school student who's looking to pursue a path, it's really exciting to kind of take everyone's blank canvas and to help them kind of paint their plan of exploration when it comes to college in particular.
What were there moments along the way, Justin, as you were figuring out your own path and your own career, where what you currently do kind of started calling to you and maybe you started thinking about, fulfillment, purpose, and really started steering the ship over to what you're currently doing?
Yeah, I think there were moments. There were a couple of moments that led up to kind of where I'm at currently. And so I will start with 2018 because I'd been doing this work for, over 10 years at that time. And I myself was starting to hit a wall, Sarah. I was like, okay, this is great. I've done the climbing the ladder thing, chasing the titles, chasing all that stuff. But I was realizing hey, this isn't as fulfilling as I thought it would be there's got to be more. There's got to be more out there. And I was reading a book that maybe I'm sure you're familiar with, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And he was talking a lot about like life philosophy and if you don't like the program, change the program. And it got me thinking like, okay, what is my life philosophy? But then I got really curious about like, what's the life philosophy of others? Because if I'm thinking this way, am I the only person thinking like this? Or are there others who are like, hey, yeah, I try to follow that script, go to college, get your degree, start your career, start a family, but maybe others have found it either not fulfilling or maybe they've just created a new path. And so I in 2018 I started this passion project where I was like, all right, in the next 2 years, I'm going to interview 100 people asking them about their life philosophy. There's people, family, friends, people I maybe met once who I just found really intriguing, just reaching out to them and just sparking curiosity to learn more about their background, how they saw the world. And that project got me going in this direction of exploration, of understanding that like, hey, there's more out there than climbing the ladder. And as I was wrapping that project up, and just like I didn't get to all 100, pandemic happened, that kind of slowed things down. But it created within me this kind of new calling of like, okay, I can rewrite my own like story. I don't have to stick to the script that I thought life was. I get the opportunity to write it. And it's kind of evolved into helping people rewrite their story, heal their story if they had an outdated narrative, and things of that nature. So hopefully,
Yeah.
I hope that helped kind of answer your question in terms of like the series of moments leading up. But that passion project totally like led me in that, helped lead me in that direction.
Yeah. I'm so inspired by this passion project because I feel like throughout the podcast, are you done with your 100 episodes yet? Or you're
Well,
almost there?
names. Well, probably by the time this lands in the world, I will probably cross the century mark.
Yeah. You and I have talked about how doing this passion project and that curiosity actually led you to where you are today. Do you want to share a little bit about maybe what were those turning moments within doing this
Yes.
podcast?
No, I totally would love to. So
Yeah.
with the podcast, because that's actually what led to the podcast, the passion project. As I was starting to wrap it up, I was asked from people like, "Hey, what are you planning to do with this?" And at first, I was like, "Oh, maybe I'll write like an article about what I've learned." And what ended up happening was I was also taking a podcasting course, and I decided like, wait, I don't want these conversations to stop. I want these conversations to keep going. And so that ended up in 2020 launching Living Once Twice, where it was all centered around that, rewriting your narrative, reinventing yourself, reimagining your life. And initially, a lot of my focus and conversations were career related. But during that time, I was also going through my own healing journey of sorts, and particularly healing journey around what I'll use the term like sex addiction. It was an area of my life that I didn't address. It was an area of my life that kind of was something I had a lot of shame and guilt about because I had these struggles going on privately. But in 2021, 2022, I hit a wall where I was like, I have a problem. And I don't know how I'm going to address it. I don't know how I'm going to fix it, but I know I've got a problem where I've got this compulsive behavior. Hopefully, I can be specific, but I won't be graphic. But I have this compulsive behavior around whether it's porn, whether it's chasing after lust and validation. And I don't know how I'm going to solve it. But the starting point for me was okay, I'm going to give up sex for a year. I'm going to give up sex for a year. I'm going to give up self pleasure for a year. Because I was like, well, I got to start somewhere. And so I went on this abstinent journey, and that year ended up turning into like a year and a half. And during that time, for the first time in probably, I mean, we can get into it, but probably like in decades, I was having a sense of like clarity because I wasn't chasing external validation. I was using that energy to go inward. And so I started to dive into healing and books around self-development and self-love, Thich Nhat Hanh's How to Love, Nicole LaPera's How to Heal Yourself. And around this time, I was also going back to therapy. And I was going back to therapy on a mission of like, this is an area of my life that has caused a lot of destruction. I've ruined love. I've been ruining my own joy, my own peace of mind. And I want to address it and heal it. And through therapy, that's when I discovered these rooms, or, sex addiction rooms and 12-step rooms. And, for people who maybe were like myself, when I used to hear that term, sex addiction, I was like, what is that? Like an excuse for like bad behavior? But it's not that. Like when we're talking sex addiction, we're not talking about someone who just loves to have a lot of sex, or we're not talking about how long you want to have sex or how many times. It's the furthest thing from that. What we're talking about, and what my struggle was, the problematic behaviors, compulsive behaviors, the irresistible behaviors that are causing negative consequences in one's life. And for me, like I said, it was sabotaging a lot of things. So as I was going through therapy and going to these rooms and really finding that what was being discussed in these rooms was really resonating with me, I was like, you know what? I know I'm not the only person that's struggling in this area. I know that there are many people who are struggling with it in silence, trying to figure it out themselves, causing disorder and destruction in their lives. And I want to help people know that there's hope, there's healing available to them. And I want them to see and hear my story, and maybe they find a little bit of that opens up their door to at least exploring this path of recovery.
Yeah. Wow. Justin, you know what I love about this, the last question that you answered, and then this one, is that it's very clear that you are someone who, when you find something that's useful for you, or when you start wondering about something, you're able to step back and go, I'm probably not the only person dealing with this. And so, how do I heal myself, fix the situation for myself, and then also bring others along and help them and share these resources? Because that's what Living Once Twice was, right? Figuring out your life. How do we design this life that's like really fulfilling? And it sounds like that's what the sex addiction work, the work around your healing from the sex addiction, that work led to your next chapter, essentially. Is that right?
And it really is. And it's really like, I give it up to my creator, because if it was up to me, I would have gone a different path. I was like, God, this isn't what you want me to talk about. Don't you want me to talk about career or job hopping to 20-year-olds and telling them that that's okay? Are you sure this is what you want me to bring to life in the world? And this is the way that you want me to serve? And then you have to go through a phase of like just surrender, where you can't deny it anymore, and the voices get clear, or there's signs from the universe that tell you. And I've heard you talk about this, like some of the deepest, darkest things are those catalysts for us to really serve others in the world. And you have to like surrender to that. And, I'm grateful for people who came before me, because hearing their stories and them being so brave and having the courage to share openly and honestly about their struggles with it, like that's what helped me in my recovery. And so for me, if like, okay, if I could do that for one person, then right on. It's just passing it forward.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful, Justin. I love the way you talk about that, because I do think a lot of when you get to doing the work that you really, essentially, it's your calling in the world, it's the work that you're made to do. I think a lot of people go through like, really, God, this is it. And I think a lot of the times it is like, you go through all these struggles yourself, and then you get to the other end of it. And I think maybe some people are built to get to the other end of it and then go, pursue whatever career there might be that might have been a dream at one point. But I think the really, really unique stories are when you go through that struggle and you get to the other end of it. And then you're like, you know what? I'm going to help other people through this.
Yeah. And Zara, I'll add, like, I'm still going through it. And I think that's one of the aspects of it too that I had to work through, was like, I'm not a finished product. I know I'm half baked with this recovery journey. And I don't know, with this type of addiction or, problematic behavior, for some people, yeah, maybe it's something that like, all right, you get scared straight once, you're done. But I know for me, you know, just there's decades of this programming, and you and I, we have fun conversations about neuroscience and Joe Dispenza's work. And I
Yeah.
think one of the other aspects that has made this such an important calling in my life, I've never been in one of these rooms where someone just shows up and says, "Hey, I'm 25, I'm 35, and I just started having this addiction or this problem." Typically, it always traces back to your teen, your preteen years. Something happened, some emotional wounds, some past pain, some unprocessed trauma, and this is the manifestation of it. And so for me, being able to help people in that cloud of that storm see like, this is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. And here's a kind of a pathway to helping you. And let me use my journey and my current struggles to maybe give you a little bit of insight and inspiration to keep working at it. Yeah, I hope that's like what I'm able to offer those that I get to work with, that are looking for help in this battle, this inner battle for so many.
Yeah. I love that you're doing this right now, Justin, because it feels very much when you talk about it, it's not like I'm the expert and I'm going to help everyone heal. It's more like I'm going through this too. This is part of my journey. I've gotten to a certain point in this journey where I can start to help others on it, right? And I love that because I think a lot of the times when it comes to addictions, situations where people feel shame, it can be really intimidating to go out and ask for help. So I'm curious, what was the inflection point for you when it comes to actually going after it and becoming you help men with sex addiction, communication, and intimacy? What was the point? What was the inflection point where you were like, you know what? This is my work. Did something happen? Did someone say something?
That's a great question. I guess what sticks out for me in terms of like, okay, I want to help people with this. And so I joined a 12-step program, and specifically called Sex Addicts Anonymous. And those who may not be familiar with 12-step programs, I just want to give a little context. So 12 steps, developed in 1930, Dr. Bob, Bill Wilson. And so the 12 steps originated from alcohol addiction, and then wanting to support their fellowship through that. But now it's kind of grown into all these like branch off for everything from gambling, narcotics to, of course, sex addiction. And so as I'm going through the 12 steps, a lot of it centered around just this aspect of rigorous honesty and making amends, surrender. And as you get to the 12th step, it's all about like that service and carrying it out forward to others. And getting to that point with my own sponsor, I was like, okay, I don't know if it's really interesting to say. I was like, I don't know if I'm qualified to like sponsor someone else or to help someone else. But through his encouragement, he's like, no, I really think you should. Then things started to sprout up, whether it would be just chatting with other guys on the program, conversation I've had with you, just other people in my life, like sharing with them my struggle. It was like, okay, there's something here. There's service that could be truly be done here. Adding to that, when it comes to men in particular, I think I had this interesting thing going on in my life where I'm doing this program. I'm also got married. I'm becoming a dad at the same time. I'm like, I want to help other men to not bring destruction to their family's life, but then also to help the future, because what we don't clean up in our closet or under our bed, our kids, for those who are having kids, our kids will find out. And then the next generation gets impacted by this. And so with those things happening of, going through my 12 steps and the encouragement of my sponsor, and then also starting to see like, wait, we have an opportunity here. I have an opportunity here to help men become like healthier and safer versions of themselves, and just knowing the impact that that could have. It was kind of like I have to do this work. I have to lean into this, as uncomfortable as it may feel at times, as taboo as the topic of sex is, which still mind boggles me. It's like I have to be a part of the solution or the movement of more people who are, trying to help many of us rewrite our narratives around sex and sexuality so that we can have like healthier conversations about.
Yeah. I love that you touched on that, as taboo as that topic is, which is also wild to me. And I know we've talked about this before, where I'm like, it's literally the one thing everyone had to have done to like make the world what it is. There's 9 billion people in the world. How do you think we all got here, right? And so I think it's so important to be able to do this work, because it's so messy. It's messy because it's taboo in so many cultures, and like we just don't talk about it, but it's something that we all do, right? I want to hear from you about why you think this work is needed and why right now.
Yeah. That's a really great question. So there's so many reasons, but I'll just share a couple. So first and foremost, as I mentioned, I know there's a lot of people who are struggling in silence in this area, both men and women. So I don't want to forget, like, those who are women out there, because I'm in those rooms and many of them have been impacted by this or see this kind of manifesting in themselves in some sort of self-sabotaging behavior. And so for me, there's a need because many people who've gone and struggled with this, wanting to, of course, support them. But I think right now is really also a critical moment because we're in this world where unprecedented times with like things like AI. And I just read an article the other day how they're going to start allowing more mature and erotic content through a lot of these, like, chat GPT and other platforms. And who's on there? Kids are on there. Kids are going to be exposed to this. And as we know with the brain, the brain's growing and developing the cerebral cortex until I think they're like the age of the mid-20s. But if we've got kids who are getting exposed to pornographic or provocative imagery, they're then also able to engage in these conversations. And we know, like, we always hear these stories about people falling in love with artificially intelligent, like, bots. Their young brains are developing this unrealistic expectation of relationships, intimacy, sex and sexuality, and who knows what that can drive them to do, or to how they end up showing up in their other relationships, or even not showing up in relationship with others because they've developed this unhealthy coping mechanism, but that puts them in isolation, puts them in withdrawal. And so I think, well, we've got these times where, like, there's no true policing around it. I mean, if you look at the research, I think since the pandemic, there's been 11.6% increase in Pornhub viewage, and that ranks Pornhub fourth behind, I think it's Google, YouTube, and Facebook. And so we've got so many people in this world across all different age ranges, backgrounds, ethnicities, sexual orientations engaging in this. And it's unrealistic, and the impact that it's having on folks is detrimental. And I don't think we can argue that. I don't think sex in itself is bad, of course, but I think when we're creating this, like, unrealistic nature or associations or narratives around it, the porn being leading the way, um, it's an area that we need to address so that people can know, like, all right, here's what's right, here's what's real, here's what's fake. And then they could kind of maybe engage in some conversations to help people develop that healthier sense of sex and sexuality as it would apply to themselves in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think the more isolated we've become and the more reliant we've become on technology and especially AI, I think the less we're able to gauge, I guess, what's normal for us, and everyone has different preferences, right? Especially when it comes to something as intimate as sex. Everyone has different preferences, and we don't talk about it. And so you might be engaging in this behavior that it's like it's hurtful to you, and you're thinking that it's normal because everybody else is doing it, or this is what's expected of me. And I think we do that in all areas of life, right? But then sex is the one area where we don't talk about it. And I love that your practice focuses on communication around it.
Yeah, and that's why for me it's important because, again, I want to, like, help people, like, back up. We gotta change the foundation because the foundation is faulty. And so many of us guilty, like, hey, my first 35 years of life, I was a part of the problem. Like, I was totally all those narratives I signed up for. But then it's like, all right, when you question, it's like, well, where did you get all those narratives? Probably from, like, movies or from you and your friends trying to figure things out, but, like, y'all don't know any better. The blind is leading the blind in all of this. So now it's time for us to have some, like, uncomfortable conversations. But that's where, like, the beauty of intimacy is truly formed in us having these conversations, in us having conversations with our partners and others. Um, to help us, like, really kind of sift through the unreal, but then really get at kind of like, oh yeah, every person is different, and this is kind of what can help us to build that connection and that closeness and that true safety. And that's what intimacy is.
Justin, when you're working with individuals facing sex addiction or compulsive sexual behaviors, what is the most common or what are the most common stories or patterns that you see tend to come up? And what tends to be true beneath the surface that maybe people aren't recognizing?
Yeah, so one of the patterns definitely is like folks kind of living like I would say like a double life. Like there's no image to like what a sex addict looks like, right? Like they all different backgrounds, shapes, colors, everything like that. And so what unfortunately happens though for folks is like there's this identity conflict because they feel that they're living a double life. Like here I am, I'm presenting in my normal 9 to 5 life as this really competent person, this really personable person, etc. I know deep down what I'm doing on Friday and Saturday nights. I know the disorder, the destruction that I'm causing. And that conflict is then causing them a whole bunch of other issues. It's impacting their self-esteem about themselves. It's impacting, they're feeling depressed. They're isolating. They're really causing themselves a lot of like internal strife and stress inside. So that's kind of one of the things, like people pattern that's like living a double life. Another pattern is people try to just do it their own way or figure it out on their own because as we talked about, like, this isn't one of those common addictions that you hear people discuss, like alcohol. We commonly hear folks talk about, even gambling, food we hear people talk about, but like, wait, I know and we're using this term and that label sex addiction, but I know there's so many conversations out there like, oh, is it truly addiction and stuff like that? Like that besides the point. But I think when people are trying to do this on their own and trying to do it their way, one of the things to that is you have a problematic behavior that's compulsive, you don't have control over. So you trying to do it your way, it's almost like look how far it's gotten you. You're not going to have success that way. Some people might figure it out. I think there's always those cases, but for the most part, especially the rooms that I'm a part of and the people that I get to work with, like it's not easy. And I guess the last thing that I'll say is kind of a pattern, and I talked about it earlier, is that a lot of this stuff roots back to earlier years. And I think that's just so critical because I want people and I hope this helps shift the stigma around it. It's like you didn't choose the situations and the experiences that happened to you that might have kind of set you on this path. But it's like now we know that we've developed this unhealthy coping mechanism. And so for here, our work is to develop a healthier coping mechanism so that we're not going back to our old ways and sometimes the old comfortable ways because we know watching porn, for example, it's not doing us any good. The time that we're wasting or what we should be focusing on, but it's comfortable. It's something that our brain and our body is like, oh, this has been my go-to for so long to relieve stress, to relieve anxiety. But now we got to get you on a different direction. And it might be uncomfortable at first, but we know that how the brain works. It's malleable. And so over time, we could help you to kind of create some new neural pathways that could help replace the old.
Yeah. A lot of what gets in the way of people changing a behavior is actually that they don't know what other behavior they would have, right? Like, what else would they do? And so I think that's a very important part of behavior change. Justin, what are some tools, frameworks, or mindset shifts that have been helpful for you during this time that you also advocate and share with your clients?
So one of the things I always like to tell them is like transformations, it's not linear. Like it's not an overnight process. So if that's what you want, if you want the microwave approach to transformation, unfortunately, I'm not the person to work with. Like that is just the reality of it. Because we live in a world where like, yeah, you hop on YouTube and you hear like, 20 days, 30 days, whatever it might be. And it's like, I don't think it works like that, or I don't think the results are going to be lasting. So if like you truly want to transform yourself, like get ready for what change truly is. It's hard at first, it's messy in the middle, but it's gorgeous at the end when we get to the end of it. And helping people to just kind of sign up for that, knowing that it's going to be uncomfortable and bumpy is one of the huge mindset shifts. The other
Yeah.
mindset shift too is like because it's a behavior that you have shame about, it really can impact your self-esteem self-worth, your own identity. And so for me, a part of like one of the first steps of working with someone is like, let's talk about the true you, because this isn't the true you, but underneath all that rubble, that true you exists. And so it's always starting with like, what's the vision for yourself? What are your values? Who do you not want to be? Because if we can create that vision for yourself as the North Star, over time, as we do this work, it's helping people to realize like that vision of you has always been there. I know right now you might be doing some behaviors that are not aligned with being someone who's of integrity, who's honest, but that honest, that person who has integrity, that person who has self-control and discipline, it's within you. And for me, that's a huge mindset shift of helping someone see. I mean, I had to go through it myself because for the longest time, I didn't think I was, you know, capable of being a loyal, honest, supportive, safe partner. It was like, I always had this narrative like, oh, I'm broken. And I carried that for so long. Or I carried other narratives of like, well, I'm a man and this is why I was designed to be here to spread my, that type of stuff. But once we can unpack it and help you sort through the rubble and do some of this rewiring of outdated programs in your mind and limiting beliefs, it's really rewarding to see someone like see the light through the fog of like, oh wow, like that is the true you. We're just clearing out the rubble to get back to it.
Yeah. Justin, you're talking about these internal blocks, right? And the internal blocks are not visible. They're less visible than the actual behaviors. How do you help your clients begin to identify those, like dig deeper than their behavior and their stories and start to identify those blocks and then navigate those safely and productively?
Yeah, so the framework I work with is kind of like a four-step approach, or like the four A's. And we start with Aspire. And as I kind of talked about like a second ago, we got to get to the vision first of like, who are you? Who do you want to become? Because for so long, especially when you're wrapped up into this, like you mentioned, the weight of your limiting beliefs has kept you down. It's kept you stuck. It's kept you stunted. And so you almost can't envision a higher version of yourself. And so it's like we start there and we start to sit with that. And then we also sit with and ask the question of like, well, who do you not want to be? Who do you not want to be anymore? And so being able to work with that vision as our North Star, then we move on to awareness. And the awareness part is critical because we'll do an audit, and it's really like a really comprehensive audit of everything, of your habits, your limiting beliefs, like what are the like tracking, like what mentally is coming up for you throughout the day. Also your environment, your routine, the people around you, like all of these things kind of feed your limiting beliefs, but also feed the behavior. And so being able to do that audit lets us then move into action, because
Mm.
then we've been able to like as thoroughly as we can kind of unpack everything, and then we can start to identify like, okay, out of all of these things, where could the true shift happen? You know, maybe because some people want to jump into action first, or they want to jump into like, okay, I need to um no longer, well, uh, they want to jump into some action, but that's like maybe not going to really help us shift where we need to go to. Or if we do move into that direction, it's probably not going to last long. So it's like by us being able to, really audit everything, we could then start to unpack like, okay, if the limiting belief that you have is that I can't get to sleep without using porn or using self-pleasure, if that's the limiting belief you've got, okay, let's unpack that a little bit. It's outdated. So like, let's talk about like, well, what can you do instead? Because right now your brain thinks that this is the only solution, but let's open up a pathway of like, well, what other things haven't you tried? And let's have a conversation about that. And then we can go into like, all right, over the course of this week, we're going to have you test this new thing out, and you're going to journal about it, because let's talk about the old you is going to want to claw, scream, bargain, beg for you to go back. It's gonna want to say like, well, hey, okay, we did it once. Let's go. Let's get back to trying this again. Or it's gonna try to ear hustle you and tell you like that you're not capable of keeping this up. And so we'll want to track that. And then it moves to like the fourth A and the final A, which is accountability. Because now that we've kind of created a plan of daily action that you need to do and weekly action that you need to do, that's going to help you to cause or create that shift, both mentally and just shift in your routine and your habits, we need to make sure we create some sustainable structure to keep that momentum going. Because there are going to be those days where you just don't want to do it. You do want to revert back to the old you, but we burned the ships. We're going no contact with the old you. And so whether the accountability is continuing to work with the coach, going to therapy, finding a group, whatever it might be, like that's kind of the framework that's honestly like helped me. And so for
Mhm.
me to be able to like offer that to clients, I feel really confident about because I know that it's led to and supported my own change.
Yeah. Thank you for walking us through that framework. I imagine having a coach, having someone like you really helps with that accountability piece because we love our comfort zones.
No, we truly do. And that's the thing that gets us all stuck up. And I think it's one of the things that we've got to be careful of. Like our brains, they're wired to love comfort, but the discomfort, I think we know it, that's where the growth is, but it's still, who wants to feel uncomfortable in any way that that might be? But that's the pathway. That's the pathway to it. And that's why I told you, if people want that kind of microwaved progress and success, I feel like this goes for you too. Like, we're just got the people, the human beings to work with because this thing is going to be messy. You got to pull up your sleeves and get to work, but you will be proud of yourself when you get through it because the level of confidence in yourself that you're gonna gain is as human beings, we're capable of so much. And it's also like, all right, if we got ourselves into this hole, we can get ourselves out. And part of it is just, yeah, getting that help to get you through those challenging milestones in the road.
Justin, thank you for walking us through a lot of your frameworks and your approach, but I want to go back to you and your story. This is a big change for you. You're in a moment of like, you yourself are in a moment of huge transition, right? Going from pre college admissions leadership to having your own coaching practice to help men with communication and intimacy. On that path, what would you say was the most difficult internal block for yourself that you had to work through?
I think for me, the most difficult block, I think a lot of it was like, one was fear. I'll start there. One was fear of just like this area of my life, because most things that you don't talk about openly, right, are like how much money you make, politics, most probably, and then of course like what you do behind closed doors, sex. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like you just leave that stuff to people's imagination. And so I think for me there was like a lot of fear of like, oh my God, like what are people gonna think about me? But then working it through, it was like, who cares? Like like in my mind, I'm like, hey, I'm a vessel here. I'm very blessed that God has given me a second like chance at life of sorts, knowing how I screwed up my last chance. And so for me, it's like, yeah, I'm all in. I'm all in on this. And whatever is the sacrifice, then so be it, or whatever is the perception of me, so be it. Because at the end of the day, too, whatever perception I was trying to hold up was false, anyways. And like this is the true me. And so there was that whole fear of like judgment and what that would look like. But then I think the other thing in terms of this whole transition, it's just been the whole like, am I qualified? Like, am I really the person to support someone through this? Like where that comes from, I'm sure there's some wounds and some, inner child stuff in there, of course, that's going out of not feeling adequate enough. And that's actually part of, I think the led me into some of those problematic behaviors anyways, was just some of those struggles that I had of not feeling adequate or enough in younger years. And then this was the way I wanted to prove my adequacy or find that validation. And so it's interesting. And like, even this career kind of like transition, when I help people in that area, I still would question myself and think like, well, all right, do I need to go out here and get a certification in this type of work? And I believe it was actually you. It was kind of like, well, your life experience kind of qualifies you. So, I mean, what more
Yeah.
qualifications do you need with this, to help and support someone? And so it's like, yeah, and it's the life experience that I got now. Like I can't give anyone experience about like, okay, yes, I'm not like 30, 40 years sober from this, but I could tell you what it's like to be sober from this, doing this work while married, doing this work as a dad and trying to show up, doing this work, and I was carried over into my 9 to 5 career and just what the struggles have been like. Myself, I've had a slip, and like I can explain some of these real life aspects of it and how I've worked myself through. And it's like, yeah, sorry, you're right. Like that is qualifications enough for continuing to help and support people in this area.
I mean, Justin, you know how I feel about this. This is like going to be a whole other hour, but but you know how I feel about this. I think it's a lot of it is internal, but you said, inner child stuff, feeling like you're not worthy enough. I also think a lot of it is our world and the way that our world is designed. And it's quite sad to me that, someone can have a bunch of certifications and like letters after their names and stuff. But like if I'm dealing with a sex addiction and you've never dealt with that, but you're like, a certified coach from like 500 different certifications and you've read a few books on, sex addictions, I'm not going to reach out to you to help me. Like, you have to have gone through it, right? I feel like this is one of those things that, like, you have to have some real experience in order to truly have that empathy and understand what someone's going through. I think your life experience is so powerful. Your story is so powerful to be able to say, like, yeah, I had a slip up. I messed up, and these are the tools that I use to get back, right?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you talking, like hearing you talk about that story. Like, there's gifts in what we have gone through, because we've kind of paid that price. But then when you do start to like strip things down to its like basic level, you're like, yeah, a lot of the core things that this type of work would involve, coaching work and stuff like that. It's like, oh wait, I've got experience like doing that, of just like listening to someone, understanding their story, and then kind of starting to kind of like parse out things, getting them to think a little bit deeper and do some self-reflection, helping them to connect the dots and think through patterns, and then having them test some things out. It's like, oh, this is all like basic coaching 101 stuff anyways.
Yeah. For sure. Justin, you're on here today because I really believe that this is your calling, and you and I have developed such a special friendship over the past several years. And so I would like to say something that if our audience is considering working with you as a coach. I know we just talked about credentials and qualifications and all that. But something about you that I think is so special and so unique is from the very first conversation that we had, I have always felt very safe opening up to you and talking to you about anything. And some of our conversations are really, really wild. Some of our conversations are just like really out there. But I feel like anytime people ask me sometimes, they're like, so who coaches you? And I have a coach that I work with, but one of the first names that comes to mind for me is always yours. I'm always like, oh, well, my friend Justin and I, we go for these walks and they're so therapeutic, but you just have such a unique ability to make people immediately feel very comfortable and very safe. And when people open up to you, you're one of the best listeners that I know. And so when people open up to you, I think from my experience, I feel very seen and very heard. And so this is why I'm so excited about this next chapter in your life, because I think you're going to make such a big difference for people who really are seeking it.
Wow. Coming from you, Sarah, that means so, so much, because you know how highly I think of you and just appreciate all of your support, your friendship. Like, you've just been a huge champion of me, like leaning into this, stepping into this. Oh my God, Sarah, I don't know if like that's what the world needs. They need someone to talk more about like transitioning and getting into podcasting or something like that. But it's like, no, like this is your new sport. So I really am grateful for you. So thank you.
I'm so excited for you. Justin, where can people reach out to you? How can they start working with you?
Yeah. So they can check me out Instagram, Living Once Twice is the podcast. So be sure to check that out on Instagram and, share a lot of different updates there. Also, they can email me at justinoliver@gmail.com as well, where I can share more just information about getting connected and working with me. But, those are the two ways: through the podcast, obviously, and then of course, emailing me.
Awesome. I will definitely share that information in the show notes. And lastly, I know you are in the middle of a transition. If there's anything that would be really helpful for you that our listeners, our audience can do Is it just following your journey on Instagram, or is there anything specific that you'd like for them to think of you for should it come up?
It's a great question. I mean, I guess, I know like your audience includes people of all gender identities. For me, the work that I'm trying to do is really with men because and so many of my fellow brothers are out there struggling and just need support. And
Yes,
so
they are.
for me, it's really just a calling into my men of listen, and obviously like their partners, their friends, their spouses, etc. But like I want men to know like, hey, deep down in your heart if there's more that you need to be doing in your life, that you have, if you've got problems that if or areas of your life that continue to call you problems, especially if it's in this area, whether it's sex, intimacy, avoidance, whatever that might be. If you're listening to this and something is making you a little uncomfortable, that's a sign. That's a sign for you, like, to explore, whether it's working with myself or some other coach or just exploring a 12-step program, which I want to say to folks is free. 12 steps is free. Like, you don't necessarily need to pay to be a part of a 12-step program to get support. I want you to see this as a sign for you, because in our society, men in particular, there's what it's the narratives of what it means to be a man, and I think we're all starting to have more conversations about that. But I want to be a part of a movement of making men healthier and safer versions of themselves, because I know that that then leads to us becoming healthier and safer versions for everyone else around us. And I think that that's something that could really improve the quality of our society. And a lot of it starts with us becoming more intimate with ourselves and more intimate with each other, meaning other men. And so that's the kind of the calling um out that I want to do, is just is out to men of like, it's time to like really wake up. That if there's areas of your life that you've been falling short on, it's time to address that, because we don't no longer want you to suffer. We don't want those around you to be impacted and suffering. And hopefully a conversation like this can really aid and support you in that journey of discovery.
Yeah. Justin, thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, your presence, your time with us. Justin Oliver from Living Once Twice. I will drop all your information in the show notes, and I can't wait to catch up with you on our next walk.
Yes, looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. And Sarah, thank you again. This is such a beautiful platform. I get inspired by you. They always say like you're the some of the five people you hang around most. And so you are like one of those people. And so I'm just really grateful to be a part of your universe, and keep doing what you're doing, because I know you are just having such a positive impact on the lives of so many people.